So, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Apprenticeship, Diversity and Social Mobility Forum, Empowering Women in Healthcare, Celebrating Women's History Month and Careers. My name is Jagdeep Soor, I'm Executive Director at Pathway Group, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. We have an array of wonderful sector experts who will provide information, advice, insights, and their lived experience in women in healthcare careers. We are, of course, also celebrating Women's History Month and International Women's Day. The theme for the 2024 Women's History Month is Women Who Advocate for Equity, Diversity and Inclusion. Equity, diversity, and inclusion are a driving force behind the Apprenticeship, Diversity and Social Mobility Forum and all of our initiatives at the Pathway Group. I'll just quickly run through the agenda. So these are sort of array of esteemed guest speakers who I'll be introducing individually once their session comes on board, and the agenda is as such. So we'll be kicking off with women who advocate for equity, diversity and inclusion. Then we'll be talking about equity and diversity in healthcare and careers. And then we'll be focusing on health and well-being, the importance of sleep, and then career education and guidance. So an insight really into the careers within the NHS. And then we'll also be hearing from Dimple Patel, who's currently an apprentice, and talking about her lived experience and her journey in apprenticeships. I'll be ending off with a focused discussion, a panel session, where we'll be able to ask the panel, you'll be able to ask the panel your questions and hopefully get some real great insights and information on the session. So we'll kick off first of all.
Just throughout this morning, you can use the tools on the side. You've got the chat function. It is just using the speech bubbles. You also have the question mark. Please do position any questions you have through this. We can make sure that we pick them all up towards the end of today's session, and it's your opportunity to ask some of those questions and really get the sort of thought leaders' insights as well.
So again, let's really have an interactive session, and please do get involved. So to start proceedings, I would like to welcome our first esteemed guest, Dr. Ope Lori. So Dr. Ope was a lecturer at both Chelsea School of Arts and Leeds Arts University between 2009 and 2019, and continues to guest lecture at the Loyal College of Art, amongst other leading institutions of art. She held a postdoctoral research fellowship at Train Research Centre UAL between 2016 and 2018, before fully utilising her knowledge and training in the diversity inclusion industry. She is also an author of Shouldn't I? And she's the author of her first solo forthcoming book, Beyond the Feminine, The Politics of Skin Colour and Gender and Visual Cultural. And that's going to be out, published by Bloomsbury in 2024. So welcome, Dr. Ope.
Thank you, Jagdeep, and everyone else as well. Happy International Women's Month. That's what I should say and start off with. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone will be able to see it. See? Okay, if anyone can see, just say yes. Anyone can just say yes.
Yes, we can see them.
Perfect, wonderful. So thank you for that, and thank you for the Pathway Group and also for the Apprenticeship Social Mobility Forum for having us here today. I think it's an important topic to speak about. So as Jagdeep said, I'm the CEO and founder of PILAA, so Pre-Image Learning in Action, and we're an arts and diversity consultancy. I used to be a university lecturer for many, many years, and actually some of the things that we'll be discussing will be coming from my forthcoming book, which you can see on the right-hand side, called Beyond the Feminine. And also, I've written quite extensively around inclusion, diversity debates, especially as it applies to visual arts education, curriculums, rewriting, structures of the workplace as well. On the left-hand side is actually a book that I wrote, well, a chapter of a book that I wrote. And on the left-hand side, you can actually see the image, which is actually part of my work. So I should also say is that I'm an artist, and I do show around, whether nationally, internationally, on some of these conversations. And what was quite interesting with the book on the left-hand side is that when the editor got hold of it, they were like, oh, can you crop out the man, because he's taking a lot of space. So I said to them, clearly you haven't read my book, because actually it's not a man that you can see there, it's a woman who is just more masculine. And again, we're talking about these kinds of perceptions around gender, sexuality, sex, how that manifests. So I thought that was quite interesting. And a lot of the conversations we're going to have today are around really trying to understand some of those constructions, especially as it applies to women, especially as it applies to gender. Again, we are here thinking about International Women's Month. So just to really start with, I just wanted to speak about this question around, sometimes people ask you, or they'll be a bit scared when people say, I'm a feminist. They think it's a little bit of a dirty word. They think that it means that people have to be quite radical. And that could be further from the truth. In fact, my father used to say that he was a feminist, and that would seem really, really strange to a man who had 3 girls and 1 boy. But actually what it meant is that he understood the kind of interlocking oppressions as it affected women, as it affected minority groups, whether that was LGBT, whether it was ethnic minorities. So he understood what that looked like. So I think it's important when we talk about, this session on women's rights, on inequality, that we understand what that looks like. And I just wanted to share with you, Bell Hooks used to be really an amazing, and she passed away a couple of years ago. But when it comes to understanding women's rights, when it comes to understanding social justice, she was the go-to person that, people would respond to. And just a quick one, she talks about when she says, what is feminism? One, it's about a movement to end sexism, sex exploitation, and oppression. It's not about being anti-male. The problem is about sexism itself. Also, she says it's important to remember that female and male, and again, that also expands into other different identity groups, have been socialized from birth onto accept sexist thought and action. So it's about how we've been acculturated to think about these things. And therefore, it means that feminism is not just about women who are making movements simplistically which are against men. That's not the case. Also, she says, it's about ending patriarchy, another way of naming the institutionalized sexism. And what I love about the last bit, she says that we are all participants in perpetuating sexism until we change our minds and hearts, and until we let go of sexist thought and action and replace it with feminist thought and action. This is why they say that everyone should be feminist, not because it's a dirty word, but because actually it's about trying to do better and try to unlock some of these systems of oppression. So before I go on, I always like to take people on a bit of a journey to really understand what we're talking about. And again, we're talking about, how we advocate for equality, diversity, inclusion. And sometimes I find, and I don't know about you, but sometimes, we use these terms and we might not necessarily understand how we are meaning these terms. So what I would like to do is just start on this conversation around what the diverse in diversity actually means. We use diverse a lot. I mean, even yesterday, there was an application that we're looking into, and it says we must look for diverse candidates. We must find diverse, leaders. And I ask myself, what is diverse when people are using it so much? So to start with, this was an article back in 2019, Time Has Flown. It was by the film critic, Clive Wonka. He's written quite extensively. He's an amazing cultural thinker. And he wrote about the Oscars, even that was it last year, about the Oscars being so white, thought about how we can diversify it. So in this article, he's speaking about the Arts Council England. So this is like a body that offers, again, support and funding for the creative arts industries. And every year they publish their EDI data. And one of the things he says is that, the Arts Council, especially because people think the arts is creative, that, they should be able to tackle issues around diversity. Actually, they found out that they're still steeped in this rhetoric. Things are not really changing. And just like many industries, it's the same sort of story, Black and Asian and minority ethnic candidates, you don't really see them at the top, you don't see them in the executives, you don't see them in the boards. Or even worse than that, the same people who have disabilities, you're not seeing them at all. You're not just seeing any ways that the workplace is changing for people who have disabilities. So he brings this, and I just put an extract of this article because I think it's just so important just to read. And he says, current diversity initiatives within the culture and creative industries continue to approach the issue of ethnic minority equality through a culture of schemes and the hyper celebration of the latest initiative. And this points to diversity agenda performing as a marketing strategy rather than the method of structural transformation. And that is such a massive one. When people say, this feels like tick boxing, absolutely, because until we try and figure out how we change these things on a deeper level, we're not going to see that transformation that we need to see. It says further, it resists a collective discussion on what diversity as a concept actually means. And we're going to look into that shortly. And then lastly, it says, and if current approaches are still useful for responding to manifold inequalities. Diversity policy, I love this one, diversity policies always seem to be driven by semi-coercion rather than social commitment. In other words, and this is almost like, there's a saying by Mary Wollstonecraft, who was the mother of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. She says, he who is forced against his will is of the same opinion still. In other words, you can mandate that we need to look at EDI, but if someone is still resistant about it, you're not going to get those real changes. So the task for us is to figure out, how do you actually get people to not necessarily just buy into it, but believe in it? Otherwise, we're not going to see the changes that we need to change. So let's go back to this question of, what diversity as a concept actually means. Normally, if I show you this case study, it was with a higher education institute. As with many organisations, industries, they were looking to diversify at their board levels. They had 14 governors, they had 20 positions, so obviously they're looking for 6 more positions to cover. They sent in their diversity data, and this is what they sent in. Normally, if we had more time, I would ask you, again, if there's anything that stands out to you. So again, as I'm talking through this, just look if there's anything that you feel stands out to you. So they gave us their identity statistics. Hopefully you'll know that when we talk about the 9 protected characteristics of the Equality Act, there's things such as age, disability, you can see it here, gender, sex, you've got gender reassignment, you've also got pregnancy, maternity, you've got age, faith, sexual orientation. But what is interesting there is that they've put diversity where they should have had race. And next to diversity, they've obviously put 20% from Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups, right? So this is the first iteration. And what I'm trying to point out here is that sometimes when people talk about diversity, all they're actually talking about is ethnic diversity. Second example, I don't know if anyone is based in London and they live in Wandsworth Council or Wandsworth Borough, then you would know, you might have known about this. This is, well, actually it's gone, it was 2018. I think it's changed now because I've spoken to someone in there. So I don't know if anyone celebrates Diversity Month. If they do, let me know at the end when we're having our Q&A. But what was interesting, that their Diversity Month, which I'd never heard before, actually replaced Black History Month. So you can imagine the controversy that came with that. So instead, everyone's really battling that Black History Month should not be one day. Now that one day, which is really a battle, is. And again, I'm just giving more examples. This article that says diverse communities, it's only until you go into it, it finds, in fact, Black and South Asian people were diagnosed at a younger average age than white people in the UK. So it's only until you go into the body of the text and you start talking about specific ethnic groups. And that's what they should say. But again, there's a conflation with diversity and ethnic minorities. Last thing.
Ethnic background, frontline occupations, for instance, frontline occupations, transport, both in transport, social care, and in the health service and social care. Really good, nearly over.
We've been talking about the importance of doing more. How many Black people are in cabinet?
Oh hang on. Pretend you didn't hear.
How many Black people are?
We've good start. There's a whole series of people from a Black and minority background, including. Oh God, this booklet is so white. Cabinets that the 2 cabinets I've sat in. Keep padding for time. Talk about diversity and listens to a diversity of views, and it's diversity of thought that's the really important. What does that mean? Decisions around the cabinet table. How can you be meaningless and offensive at the same time? Governments that Boris Johnson leads. Come on. Is this a list of Tory cabinet posts, or is it a Dulux white colour chart? I just don't know. And it happens that I'm more likely to find Jim Davidson in here. Oh, I got it. Kwasi Kwarteng. As Kwasi Kwarteng was sitting around the cabinet table with me. Yes, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, he's a junior minister, but that's fine. You know, it's enough. That's one. It's enough. It's enough. It's enough. Okay, I'm going to take a break for a few minutes because I'm going to be
sick. Be right back.
Laugh and I cringe. I can't see your faces, but hopefully you were probably laughing as well, because when the actual interview did come out, obviously there's a lot of controversy with that. And I think the issue is not that what you're saying is particularly wrong, and I'll get into that, but again, it's almost, it came across that he didn't really know what he was saying, and he used the kind of sound bites that sounded good. It's a diversity of thought. So again, when people go into these conversations, they don't necessarily understand what they're talking about, and they may just use it. So this is how I see it when people start using the diverse. Again, I question, what do they mean when they're looking for diverse candidates? And if they're looking for diverse candidates, then who are the non-diverse candidates? Let's just put it like that. So this conversation actually comes from a kind of historical conversation around whiteness. Now, again, in the last couple of years, people thought about how do we decolonize systems? How do we decolonize the workplace? These conversations have been there for some time, but again, it's coming more into fruition. So I'm just going to read you this, because I think this is, when we're talking about diverse, we're actually talking about whiteness. And we're talking about everyone else who's not in that category. So brilliant book, it says, as such, whiteness is an incredibly powerful cultural construct, not as we've noted biologically determined. It is against this norm that all others are invited to define themselves. We might note that white people are seldom articulated as white, they just are. In news stories, if somebody's white, they're invariably not identified as such in text. Model, writer, director, as opposed to black model, black writer, black director. And again, let me just point out, it doesn't need to just be about race. It could be, again, we're here celebrating history, Women's History Month. So it's the same thing to about women. So women's football, the women's team, women is always a prefix, because obviously it's in a minority group as opposed to men who are the majority. So it can be that way around as well. White people eat food. Theirs is not ethnic food. Everyone's food is ethnic. If you take white people or British food, take it to Nigeria, that's my culture, my country of heritage, they'll say it's ethnic, they'll think, what is this? Right? So they wear clothes, theirs is not ethnic fashion. So by not being race, they become the human race. And it's that kind of universaling of, the system is that what we're trying to challenge. So when I see this kind of setup between the diverse versus the non-diverse, what we mean is Black and ethnic minorities and all marginalised underrepresented groups are too diverse. So again, whether LGBTQ, whether again women's groups, whether disability, as whiteness in heteronormative culture is to the non-diverse, right? So just that's the kind of setup that we're seeing. And again, this is a long history of conversations around whiteness. Brilliant book on the left-hand side, which shows all the kinds of ideas around white, whether it's film, whether it's looking at just the colour white, again, the symbolism. And then a really great ex-colleague of mine, Professor Les Henry, he talks about whiteness. He says it operates as a conceptual framework and not a mere way to describe white people, which is where I think many people fail to have the right conversation. They draw the wrong conclusions as they focus on complexion and not a system of power. So that sometimes people get defensive when they say, okay, there's racism or there's structural racism. Actually, we're talking about this total system and not necessarily about skin. And this is where this idea of white privilege came into it. And, you'll hear a lot of people talking about white privilege, and it was coined by the American feminist, anti-racist scholar as well, Peggy McIntosh. And what happened, she came up with a list of 46 things, and I'll show you a few of them, that she could benefit from as a white woman. These are things she's privileged from. So she says, I've come to see white privilege as an invisible package of unearned assets, which I can count on cashing in each day, but about which I was meant to remain oblivious. Right, so white privilege is like an invisible weightless knapsack of special provisions, maps, passports, code books, visas, clothes, tools, and blank checks. And these are just some of the things you might resonate with from some of these. So she says, I can turn on the TV and open to the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. If I want, I can pretty sure I can find a publisher for this piece of white privilege. When I was writing my book, and I was interested to see all the kind of hoops, the hurdles, the processes, definitely had my challenges with getting my books published, checks, credit cards, or cash, and count on my skin colour not to work against the appearance of financial reliability. And these are just a few more. And she says, I'm never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. Now, what's interesting, if you've ever maybe spoken about white privilege, people actually forget where it came from. So a year earlier, she was actually writing a paper, a working paper called White Privilege and Male Privilege. And it was because of her experiences of working in a women's studies department that she understood the phenomena of male privilege. And it's only on that awareness about how the system was supporting men. So I'll just read a little bit. She says, she noticed that men's unwillingness to grant that they were overprivileged, even though they may grant that women are disadvantaged. So, they'll say that they'll work towards women's status in society, university curriculum, but they can't or won't support the idea of lessening men's. So it's only because she became aware of this system in her experience of being a woman that she actually started to think, you know what, maybe this is actually how it is when we relate or we start thinking about her privilege as being a white person. And that's the context as well. So white privilege is not just thinking about race, it's actually thinking about gender within that as well. But sometimes it gets lost in that conversation. So coming back to diversity, I always like starting from the basics. I go back to my dictionary definitions. It's actually the state of being diverse, variety, the practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations. That's diversity. It's about difference. That's what I say, difference, variety. So brilliant book if you're interested in getting it by Matthew Seeds, really brilliant, Rebel Ideas. And basically he's just saying, look, people from different backgrounds, with different experiences often think about problems in different ways. And that's why we actually want the diversity, because if we have groupthink, we're not going to be able to see if there's any sorts of gaps or if we're missing anything, if there's solutions that we need to solve. It's best if we have multiple people in the room. So in terms from an EDI perspective, we always said inclusion of gender is always measurable in terms of what can we deliver to those who are excluded. Now, some people say, and I've always heard this, you might hear it as well, but people say, but what about us? We've been left out of this. But then the way that I will say is that there's no point of someone who's in the majority group now trying to dictate how things should be given to others, because actually the world has been engineered for you. It's been engineered for those in dominant positions. Good example will be thinking about neurodiversity. Again, that's been something in the last couple of years people speak about a lot more of. So to be neurodiverse, it was coined by Judy Singer back in 1990. She was a sociologist. And she just basically said it's a range of diversity in the ways in which our brains function, the ways in which we think, we learn and relate to others. And she says, look, we do not think, learn and process information the same way. And again, this is a really beautiful image. You've probably seen the one on the left-hand side, but the one on the right-hand side now thinks about how we look at equality, diversity, inclusion, or maybe terms such as equity, but through an accessibility and disability lens. So on the right-hand side, you can see the first one would probably be about equality, where you can see if I give everyone the same sort of support systems, the person in the wheelchair is still not going to benefit from that. So then we say, okay, well, how can I be fair in this situation? And that's the equity in the second image. Okay, let me give the wheelchair user a ramp. Let me give the person in the middle 2 supports. And the person who seems to be taller, let's not give them anything. Actually, that's going to cause some issues in itself. So it's the third way. The one on the right-hand side is the one which is the most radical, it's the most difficult, but that's the way that we need to look for. And the best way to describe this, and this is about really trying to undo the structure, is there something that I can do that is going to benefit everyone? And I had a colleague who said to me he was neurodiverse, and they said, okay, neurodiverse, that wouldn't benefit someone who's neurotypical. And that is a way that we have to look at it. What can we do that actually tries to benefit everyone? So reasonable adjustments, again, people getting their questions early ahead of time. If you go for an interview, that benefits everyone. It doesn't save or waste any time. So it's things like that. So for me, those are the reasons for diversity. And again, I hear it so many times when people say, but what about us? I was privy to an exec CEO who was saying the same thing. And they felt, okay, well, that means that we've just got to recruit. We've got to do positive discrimination and just recruit minority groups. That couldn't be far further from the truth. And that's not what we want. We want more of the positive action. And for me, they were missing the actual, again, the reasons for diversity. As we said, the first thing is that, if you have an issue, having multiple people from different groups will help in that situation. It's also about tackling blind spots. Is there something that we're missing? If we're all from the same group, there's something that we may not be answering. And I really love this extract from Why No Longer Talking to White People About Race. Interesting book. But one of the things Renee Adeloge says, she says, an uncomfortable truth dawned on me as I logged my bike up and down flights of stairs and commuter town train stations. The majority of public transport I've been travelling on was not easily accessible. No ramps, no lifts, none impossible to access for parents with buggies or people using wheelchairs or people with mobility issues, like a frame or a cane. Before I'd had my own wheels to carry, I'd never noticed this problem. I'd been oblivious. Remember, that was what we heard in the white privilege. I'd been oblivious to the fact that this lack of accessibility was affecting hundreds of people. So until she came to that group, let's say a minority group now, where she could see the effects of not having accessibility, then she became aware. Until that point, she just never known. And that's how we had to try and look at this system. So going to what Matt Hancock said, and it's quite interesting, I forget that he was the former Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, when he says that it's diversity of thought, that's a really important thing, that when you're taking those big decisions around the cabinet table, actually there is truth in that. So I don't know if anyone watched this, but again, 3 years before 2021, you had the Yorkshire Cricket Club scandal, where you had the player Azim Rafiq, who was talking about his racism that he was met with, I think, between the years 2008 and 2018. In fact, last year, and you can get this online as well, you've got the 317-page report called Holding Up a Mirror to Cricket, and it was done by the ICC. And again, you can see these things which are probably symptomatic of many industries. It said structural and institutional racism, again, it continues to exist. Women are treated as subordinate to men at all levels of support. There's a prevalence of elitism, class-based discrimination in cricket. And it's so interesting because we know that class or socioeconomic status is not in the Equality Act. I know people are canvassing for this, but can you imagine if it was in the Equality Act? That would change a lot of things. So it's still elitist. Obviously, Black cricketers have failed, and the EC must develop a plan to revive it. And then also many who experience discrimination do not report it because of distrust in the authorities. So it's there online if you want to see it. But what was quite interesting, this was a proceeding, you could watch it on BBC, and I was watching, I just thought, oh, this is interesting. You know, they're talking about this racism. And I was just thinking, given what we know about diversity, the people in the room, not saying that they wouldn't be suitable to tackle this issue, but the thought occurs to me, but if we do need to tackle it, who should be in the room to be there, right? And so in the same way that I'd like us to think, if I wanted to tackle women's inequality, or I wanted to diversify recruitment, let's just say, who do I need to be in the room and where do I start? And that's how I'm going to try and end with. So these are the 4 starting points to consider. That's what I would say. The first one we will look at is the setup. Second, unconscious bias or strategic avoidance. Third one is inclusive language. And the last one, lived experience. So when I say the setup, I'm actually, and these are some of the things I also talk about in my book, these are the, you know, we need to look at the root causes. We need to look at the structures. We need to look at the ways that things have been arranged for us, right? And I also call this a bit of an illusion, because actually you realize that things can be done a different way. In the same way that you might understand why I put pink is for girls in blue and blue is for boys in pink. I say this because many people will say, oh my gosh, you're so adamant when they've got children, or perhaps they've got nieces and nephews, or young adults or young people. They say, oh no, she really wants to wear pink, or he really likes blue. Actually, again, this is a construction, because until the First World War, let's say early 20th century, it was the other way around. Blue was used for girls because it was more of a masculine colour, and blue was clearly, or what they said, was more feminine. But for years, many people said, no, but it's biology. This is the way it is. It's not the way it was, and it was done differently. So we have to understand that culture does not make people, people make culture. And this is why sometimes you've got to look above the surface or beyond the surface. Last couple of years, we've seen obviously the women's football has started to explode, really taken off. We had the women's Euros, and again, there was conversation around we need to diversify the women's team. Anita Santi, hopefully you can see on the right-hand side, she's at bottom left. And she'll say again how, again, the women's team needs to diversify. And the image on the right-hand side, you can see the women's team back in 2010. So for her, she said actually there's more diversity at that point. But again, people probably think, like I did as well, like, okay, well, what's the issue here? Because obviously we already see the sea of maybe white women, perhaps with blonde hair as well. That's another added interest that I look into when I write in my book. So what are the factors that perhaps have attributed to this kind of, on the surface, this whiteness? And she writes a really brilliant piece, and I think we all need to look at it when she talks about, okay, what is some of these barriers to diversity in the women's game? So just a few things I'll spot. Gender cultural barriers in some Black, Asian minority communities. There's pressure for girls to conform to gender norms. As someone who played football, I definitely could speak to that. Also, we have, which is a really big one, the school education system. Some schools slow to introduce football as an option for girls. Now, one of the things that happened from the women's, the Lionesses winning, they've now advocated, I don't know if it's probably this year or it's maybe coming to effect, that girls and boys should have the same amount of sports and the same offers of sport in schools. So that's a new intervention they've placed. And it's just crazy just to think that actually that wasn't the case. Also, again, English female scouting system, demographics of where to look. It needs to be a bit more diverse, moving from locations from the northeast and different regions as well. And I think she's saying that if we address all these things, perhaps then, again, also look at this class dynamic, we will start seeing a different level of representation. The next thing to look at is gender inclusive or gender neutral language. Getting your language right. See what you think about this.
Head teachers, listen, if you've got blood pressure issues, just stay calm in this next item. Head teachers at primary schools in Brighton have enraged parents after telling their students, the little kiddies, to stop using the words mum or dad in favour of grown-ups. Why? To avoid discriminating against non-traditional families.
Yes, the 4 schools' equalities policies outline the language that staff should use to ensure that pupils raised in diverse families are not stigmatised. Is it really time to stop saying mums and dads? Joining us now to discuss this is author and campaigner Natasha Devon and broadcaster Afia Hagen. Well, lovely to see you both. Afia, when you heard that the primary school pupils were being told, don't say mums and dads, say grown-ups, what did you think?
To be honest, I think that this is frankly ridiculous. If we want to have more inclusivity in schools and we want to include everybody, of course, this might appeal to, or they're saying that this is because, you know, some students have non-traditional families and they're brought up by grandparents, godmothers, aunties, uncles. They may have 2 mums, they may have 2 dads, or they may be under guardianship, whatever it may be. Instead of excluding language, instead of taking out the terms mum and dad, we can add terms like guardian, like parent, like grown up at home. I think instead of wasting time on creating these kind of policies, let's focus on educating our children. Let's focus on teaching them more about inclusivity and diversity instead of getting rid of the term mum and dad. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Yes, we want to include people in non-traditional families, so let's include more language and not exclude age-old terms that have been around for so long, like mum and dad. I genuinely don't think that people would find these terms offensive. Let's include more language, not exclude it.
Natasha, what's offensive about a child referring to their parents as mum or dad? What's remotely offensive about it?
Right, if we're going to have this discussion, I think it's really important that we look at what the policy actually says, because I do believe that it has been deliberately skewed by the newspapers, and unfortunately that misunderstanding has made it onto this show this morning. What the policy states is when staff are talking to groups of children, they use the catch-all term grown-ups. This has nothing to do with an individual's right to identify as mum or dad, or a child's right to call their parents mum or dad. This is in recognition of the 2.8 million single-parent households, the 1.1 million blended families, the 300,000 children living with same-sex couple parents, the 80,000 in foster care, the 41,000 who are bereaved of one parent before the age of 18. When staff are talking to groups, they use the term grown-ups to include those children so that they don't feel that they are abnormal or excluded in any way. This benefits everyone. It harms absolutely no one. And once you understand it in that context, it's really difficult to have an objection to it.
Well, Natasha, with respect,
He has an objection to it, obviously. But I think the main thing to show here is, again, they're talking about, and hopefully it was clear to you, they're talking about if you're given a service, is there a language that you can use that is encompassing of everyone? Not to negate those terms, but is there an umbrella language to actually speak to everyone? And again, you can think about in terms of healthcare, what is an inclusive language to use? I'm just showing you this because actually something that happened maybe some months back where my car wheels got stolen and I called the police and as I was speaking to the police, the first thing they said to me, Mrs. Lori. And I was thinking, I'm not even married. So where did the Mrs. come from? Not even doctor, Mrs. And the second thing he said, is this your husband's car? I was like, what on earth is going on here? So again, thinking about inclusive language, people think it's just a gender debate around LGBT. It's not. So the last few things I'll just talk about is, again, unconscious bias, because that is actually this case here, what the police said is just an example of conscious bias. We know it's been a big thing in the last couple of years. People say conscious bias, but I actually think it's something a little bit more sinister, where people are very conscious of it. And this is what I would call strategic avoidance, and I'll give you an example. Well, thank God for technology, because you just think, oh my gosh, am I seeing things? And unconscious bias would just be like, well, it didn't happen. It was by mistake. It was an accident. But again, one way to mitigate unconscious bias in these scenarios is to make sure that what you do for one, you do for everyone else, because I hope you would agree with me, the optics do not look great in both these situations. Granted, at least is around when Boris Johnson and Trump were coming to power, but these are their constituents. So in terms of leadership, making sure, again, to mitigate that, to mitigate that kind of bias, making sure that what you do for one, you do for everyone. So again, we can talk about that. Now, the last thing just to look at is just lived experience. We work with quite a few charities, including homeless charities, and we've learned a lot around how gender presents within the case of homelessness, or how women's experience of homelessness is quite different. So there's something that they call the chain kind of list, and it's a combined homelessness information network. So it's like a database. And what it is that when they say, and this is actually based in London, so when they look around for people who are rough sleepers, there's a particular image that they have, which would be like someone who's probably in a sleeping bag, or someone who's on cardboard. So that kind of stereotype of someone who's a rough sleeper. So what they found actually for women present quite differently. What they'll see is that women actually don't tend to sleep at night because of the threat of violence, which obviously all homeless people probably face. But for women, it's also quite specific. So instead of women sleeping at night, they don't sleep at night. They actually tend to walk around. And that means that when people are looking for people to support on this particular list, they omit a lot of women because it's just not how it looks like. So again, it's really thinking about the kind of lived experiences that people have, and specifically, again, women who might present homelessness. So that's how I just want to leave it. Again, we can have questions at the very end when it comes to that, but that's how we'll end. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Opie. I mean, that's such an insightful, interesting. Well, I was truly glued to what you were saying, and thank you for sharing your insights. We're so grateful and lucky to have you. I know that you're staying for the rest of the session, so we obviously have the panel session at the end where we can ask some questions and things like that, and hopefully you're able to share more insights. I know I was writing a couple of questions down for you as well, which hopefully you can answer. But thank you very much. Okay, so the next session, we're going to be talking about equality and diversity in healthcare. So we're kindly joined by Clare Hutton, who's a transformation manager at Harrogate and District Foundation NHS Trust. Clare is, as a transformation manager within NHS, with an extensive background in nursing and healthcare transformation, from hands-on running nursing in operating theatres to strategic leadership. Apologies for that. Her journey is marked by a unique blend of clinical insight and management prowess. She was educated at Leeds Beckett University and further refined through the EJA Master's Programme within the NHS Leadership Academy. Clare specialises in healthcare transformation, staff engagement, HR consultation, digital innovation, leadership, and fostering a cultural change. So within that, I'd like to welcome Clare on the stage, and thank you very much, Clare, for joining us. I think you might be on mute.
Yeah, morning everybody. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It makes me sound much more special than I really am. I'm really honoured to be here today and just talk through some bits around the NHS healthcare opportunities and share my experience as a woman in the NHS in adult learning and my journey along the way. I've got a few slides that I'm going to start with at the beginning, but then I'm going to sort of just chat to you and hopefully lots of questions and comments in the chat box would be really helpful and encouraging. So I've just got a few little bits just to show you. I do a lot of teaching in lots of different teams across the NHS around cultures, behaviours, what makes people tick, how we get the best out of people, and how we really get people to be their best versions and identify that the skills and richness that they've got and what that actually brings into healthcare, and ultimately the impact that has on patient care and how we deliver that. So there's just a few little things that I'm just going to go through in mindful of it's Women History Month and we're talking about empowering women. So 1948, NHS was born, and compassion. So compassion was always the core value in NHS, and it should always be the core value. And I see compassion every day in my work with people that deliver that healthcare. And when we talk about compassion, it's really trying to find that definition of what compassion means. And it's the kindness and the willingness and wanting to help each other and care about each other and genuinely be as authentic as possible in what we do. So I really share this message with people, just as a reminder of what it is we do, why we show up for work, and the impact that we're having. Again, I'm not very technical, so you won't have to excuse me when I go through. So obviously we're talking about Women History Month and how we advocate equity, diversity and inclusion. And again, this is about recognising that women have always come back from this uneven playing field. We've had the amazing presentation prior to me where it really did emphasise where there's areas that still need improvement, and it's still going on, and it's still a challenge, but it's now creating a workforce, a group of people who will speak up and who will advocate and who want that justice and want the realisation that we need to be better. So it's just recognising that. So as an NHS, we must welcome everybody. We know it's under a massive challenge. The NHS People Plan came out in 2020, and it really recognised that we must celebrate diversity in all its forms. And where we recruit it internationally, we get the richness and the diversity of people's skill sets and what that brings, and it's representative of the people that we serve in the NHS as well. So this has been going on for a few years now. Again, still not quite hit the mark, but we must keep trying and must keep keeping this in the forefront of our minds, that we to belong and to have trust and to build these healthy cultures at work for healthy mindsets, psychological safety, so that we can deliver best care must always be something that we talk about. The accountability of leaders. I do lots of work around leadership, particularly women leadership, but everybody's a leader. There's no definition that says you are a certain band or a certain grade or a certain title that makes you a leader. Everyone has a responsibility to be a leader and to demonstrate their leadership skills, and bringing all of those skills helps embed true leadership, authentic, compassionate, inclusive, diverse leadership, which again is represented in the Equality Act and in the Constitution, that we should all be doing those equal opportunities for everybody, regardless of where they come from, what they do, what their skill set is, because a team, and this is the NHS is a team, requires so many different compartments to make it work and the wheels to turn, and that's recognizing that everybody brings something really authentic and special. So one of the things, these are the three things, these are kind of my strap lines. So we should empower, we should encourage, and we should embrace. And I would always ask you to choose kindness. It's a bit of a thing I have on Twitter. It's not about being kind, it's about choosing to be kind. And it's really important, and kindness is one of those really interesting things when I talk about it, is people think it's a bit twee or it's a bit fluffy, and actually kindness is really powerful. It's contagious, it's free, it's healthy, it's underrated, it's inclusive, and people's behaviours around kindness are really interesting. So the cognitive behaviours when somebody's kind, when you're on the receiving end of kindness or when you are giving kindness, releases oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. It makes you feel good, it makes you healthy, and it's contagious. So you're more likely to be kind to the next person if you've interacted in kindness. In a workplace, if you are kind at work, there's a really good paper in the University of Warwick that shows that you are more productive and your job satisfaction is increased if your work culture is of a kinder nature. So we need to set people up for success around kindness and say it's not just about saying your hair's nice or that was really good. It's about being radical with our kindness. And Kim Scott does a really good book on radical candor. And that's about delivering feedback to each and every person that we work with that gives them some feedback to be able to let them be better. And my one goal as one person in the NHS as a nurse is to get everyone to be their best version, whatever that looks like. And that means I need to be able to take constructive feedback. I need to be able to know how to be better and know what I need to improve, but to be done in a way that's supportive, it's encouraging, it's in a coaching and mentoring style. It gives me a confidence to be able to grow and to be better, and the flexibility that comes with that. Civility, so there's again a really great campaign, Dr. Chris Turner, please go look at it. There's amazing TED Talks around these subjects, and it talks about civility saves lives, massive campaign. And again, it's recognising rudeness is just as contagious as kindness. So we have to choose which we want to be. If we're rude to somebody, that has an impact. That has not just an impact on the person that's rude, but the person who witnesses that rudeness. It reduces our capacity to work, our thinking, our bandwidth. Everything gets reduced if we experience rudeness. So when we're dealing with culture and recognising that we need the inclusivity and diversity and equality, it's recognising that every individual is different and their needs are different. So again, I'm not going to go too much into this one, but for the culture, these are the dynamics that are required for a healthy, working, empowering, safe, compassionate, and the three things that we're talking about today are very much embodied in it. And I normally do this, and I would ask the room the question, and I'm unable to do it, but I'm just going to ask you to think about this, and we'll maybe do it in the Q&A at the end, because I won't give the answer. What is the most important word in any language? And if you can just all have a think about that, and then I'll come back and just be curious as to what you all think it is at the end, because it's really interesting what the answer is. So Henry Ford, lovely man, lots of quotes, but if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So I ask you to be brave in all your decision makings that you do within healthcare. And I want to sort of just share a little bit about me, because I was asked to share my journey, because it's quite, I suppose, quite an interesting journey. I'm a single mum. I was married, I lived abroad, I lived a really good life, and my relationship ended, and I ended up being a single mum, and I had young children, very young children, and I got postnatal depression. And I decided that I wanted to do something completely different. I wanted a complete career change. And at 29, I applied to Leeds University to be a nurse. And I was a single mum, and I got in, which was really amazing, because I was 29. I'd not finished A-levels. I'd dropped out of school. And I didn't know if I was good enough. I didn't know if I was clever enough. I didn't know if I could do academia again. And it was a massive challenge, but it was something that I really wanted to go forward and try. I got in, I did 3 years, it was blooming hard. I was a very minimal bursary, we didn't have grants and things. It wasn't internet. I sat on a dining table with books and libraries and referenced everything, and it was really difficult. And all the time in those 3 years, I questioned, am I able to can I do this? So when I qualified in 2005, I started working in operating theatres at Leeds, teaching hospitals, and I love operating theatres. In there is magic. In there is extraordinary people doing extraordinary things every day. The gifts and talents and richness that are in operating
Sorry, it does appear that Claire's having some technical difficulties at this moment in time, so I have just spoken to her while she tries to remedy that. I will sort of kick in and pick up my section, and we can continue on with sort of hearing Claire's sort of journey through sort of life-changing journey in healthcare itself. For my section, I wanted to sort of come and talk a bit of the health and the wellbeing side of things. For myself, I've been with Pathway Group for the past 10 years. I've been working in the education training industry for around about 15 years. And very early on in my sort of career, I became involved within sort of safeguarding measures. And it may be a term that many of you are very familiar with. For myself, when we start talking about safeguarding, it isn't just a matter of sort of dealing with one situation at a time. It is, you know, constantly managing situations and being able to help and support. I often put safeguarding, health and safety, health and well-being, welfare, all in that same umbrella, and it's kind of something that we go around and we cover in a day-to-day basis. What I wanted to sort of cover for my part of this was to bring a bit of a interaction. If anybody does know me, they know that I enjoy a good quiz, or more hosting a quiz, and it was to sort of put that as a bit of a learning experience and to pass over to yourself at the same time. So while Claire is sort of dealing with the technical issues, I will sort of kick straight into that. So if you do have your mobile phones handy, if I can bring up, everybody likes a quiz, and I always sort of refer to Kahoot being the main one for myself. So if I can share my screen, and we will we'll get started. So hopefully people have attempted a Kahoot quiz previously. You will have on your screen a QR code which you can scan with your mobile phone. You will also have a PIN code. You can go to kahoot.it and then type in the PIN code, or you could scan your QR code. I'll give you all a couple of minutes to sort of gain access. Even to our speakers today, please, you can join in on this as well. What I will do is it will showcase 3 winners at the end. I will look to sort of contact you after the event, and I will look to send out a Pathway branded notepad and also pen for you as well. And I must say, and I'm sure any of the Pathway Group staff are on at the moment, these are probably some of the best pens around. They are good writers, and it will be my honour to sort of pass these on to yourselves. So recently at the Festival of Apprenticeships, which is sort of one of our own initiatives, I got talking to an organisation known as Mind. Some of you may be aware of them and aware of their work. They're certainly conversations I've had in the past, but where I was sort of engaging with it was just sort of coming away and understanding the amount of resources and support that they have available. You know, when you think of safeguarding, people may be looking for, you know, that help and support, and organisations such as Mind provide those resources, that support to help people find out more about what it may be they're experiencing, how they can start to overcome some of these barriers as well. And with today's topic of being sleep, I must say, you know, we've got different, we've all got sort of different sort of routines when it comes to sort of bedtime duties. I mean, I remember years and years ago with my children being very young, my eldest daughter, who's now 16, loved to have her back stroked to send her off to sleep. I tell you what, I'm glad that she grew out of that, because I couldn't be doing that now at the age of, well, her being at the age of 16, stroking her back to get her to sleep. You know, being those sort of routines, and it's those things that we do. And I wanted to sort of have that as an opportunity to, you know, look over some sort of common situations when it comes to sleeping, what our thoughts are, and then also turn it into a bit of a quiz at the same time. So still people are joining, so I will leave it for another minute or two, and then we will see about getting started.
Martin, you didn't give me an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Oh no, that's what I did try and come up with that. I was just stepping in at that moment, mate. All that time typing that up, I tell you. Oh. I'm going to see if I make start, because I'm conscious of time. I know we've got 2 more speakers, well, 2.5 more speakers to go through, and obviously our panel discussion as well. So for those that haven't been able to access, I do apologise, but we're going to make a start. Please do sort of play along and see what you could learn as we go through as well. So here we are. How well do you know sleep? But the first question is, what is the recommended sleep for most adults? Is it 5 to 6 hours? Is it 7 to 8? Is it 10 to 12? Is it less than 5? What is the recommended amount of sleep for most adults? Yeah, so from my research that I completed and looking over the information through from Mind, it is 7 to 9 hours is the recommended amount of sleep that the average adult should have. Obviously, it's a matter of getting that consistency when it comes to that sleep, and it's that regular pattern and routine that certainly complements that sleep. Sometimes it can be quite easy to brush it off as being tired, or I was up late last night. But when it's a few dates that you do have, because we know that lack of quality sleep or lack of sleep in its own right, it's those sort of bare essentials that we do need, but it can be sort of detrimental to the likes of our well-being and mental health as well. So to continue through, you'll start to see the scoreboard sort of coming through there, and I'm sure we'll have lots of sort of moving around as we go through. So Claire, I can see you come back. Don't worry, we will get you back on in a moment. Which of the following is recommended practice for better sleeping? Is it using electronic devices right before bed? Is it drinking caffeinated beverages in the evening? Maintaining a regular sleep schedule, or exercising vigorously right before bedtime? There we go. Bit of a no-brainer there, isn't there? He's having that sort of regular sort of routine when it comes to that sleeping. And I know from my time previously, sometimes it would be depending on what that work commitment is. It could be working later. It could be going to bed earlier. But it is having that sort of sometimes we refer to it as a bit of a, particularly for children, we refer to it as a bedtime. But it is having that regular routine that certainly helps and supports anyway. There we go, some movements already, some names through. So I'm not going to make a big deal about this part, but those that do come up at the end on the podium, I will be sure to supply you with some Pathway group branded materials. So what is the impact of a restful sleep environment? So it has no impact on the quality of sleep. It can increase the time that it takes to fall to sleep. It can improve the quality of sleep and help you fall to sleep faster. Or it only matters for people with that insomnia condition. See what we're all thinking there. So again, yeah. So having that restful sleep environment. So sometimes, I mean, it could be within the bedroom. If you're not at home and you're sort of out and about, sometimes it's that little bit different. Some people will find it being unrestful if you're in sort of when you're staying away from home, because we like our sort of home comforts is that key part really. So how does exercise affect our sleep? So regular exercise has no effect on our sleep. Regular exercise can worsen the quality of our sleep. It could improve the sleep quality. It only helps if it's done right before bedtime. So yeah, so it's that regular exercise can improve the sleep quality, and I can sort of speak from the heart on this, and from my own personal experiences, where I find I get myself into that exercise routine, that the quality of sleep is much better. It's much easier to go to sleep, fall to sleep, and then obviously feeling more alert and energetic within the morning as well, which I think is very key, and one of those benefits that we often sort of overlook. Also, we've got all movement on that board now. I can see some smiles coming through from our speakers as well. So what role does the sunlight have? What role does exposure to natural light have on our sleep? Could it disrupt your sleep schedule? It has no effect. It can regulate your body's sleep-wake cycle, or it should be avoided to improve sleep quality. I know sometimes where you have the sun, we often have the heat, and obviously with ourselves, it can be that the increase within the heat that can sort of disrupt the the quality of our sleep anyway. But they do say by sort of going out, getting that fresh air with natural lighting, it helps regulate the body's sleep-wake cycle. So again, it's part of that sort of sleep routine that really does help and support yourself. And again, where we know we're getting that regular sleep, it can certainly support with mental health and other conditions as well. But just over the halfway mark now, and there's your score tables at this moment in time. Sunshine there on a on a streak, and maybe coming for that first place. So why should you avoid large meals before bedtime? They can make you more active. They can cause discomfort and affect your sleep. They have no effect, or they help you sleep better. What's our thoughts on this one? I always find this one, why is it, you know, you have a roast dinner on a Sunday and then you always feel a bit sleepy afterwards, you know, you want to have a nap or something. It is one of those things where it doesn't quite make that bit of sense for me, but it is that having a large meal right before bedtime, it can cause that discomfort and affect your sleep routine and pattern as well. Question 7 then. So which of the following can prepare your body for sleep? A warm bath or shower before bed, watching TV in bed, drinking a large glass of water right before bed, or engaging in heated discussions. I do think here it could be a couple of them, depending on the type of person you are, so I do apologise. Or somebody likes to engage in a heated discussion right before bed that helps them prepare for it. But it is that warm bath or shower, and that was something that I wasn't aware of. But apparently that bath or that shower, I know they often do the, my partner always has the Radox, you know, these lavender ones. Oh, helps me sleep. I think she just likes to have all these lovely bath salts and whatever around. But apparently that bath or shower before bed can improve that quality of sleep and also help you go to sleep faster as well. So how can stress impact on your sleep? It has no impact. It can make it easier to sleep. It can make it harder to fall asleep or stay asleep, or it can only affect your dreams. So stress, I mean, some people obviously enjoy stress and it makes them easier to sort of fall asleep. I know where I've dealt with stress previously, sometimes it can be harder to go to sleep because you're constantly thinking about it, then you're waking up in the night. And it's these sort of things that, you know, that can be those sort of impacts. So for myself, and I would agree with this, it's harder to fall asleep and to get that quality of sleep, staying asleep. With stress, there's obviously different ways to manage these. From my point of view, I do find the physical activities in terms of running, jogging, going out to the gym and things like that do help. And if anything, it makes you a bit more active and can help support with that creativity as well. But obviously, we all deal with stress in different ways and there's different levels. But it is making sure that we know where we go to for advice and support as well. Okay, which of the following is a benefit of limiting screen time before bed? So increases energy levels right before sleep. It has no effect on sleep. It can help you fall asleep faster, improve the sleep quality, increases a more active lifestyle. So, you know, what is the benefit of limiting that screen time before bed? Many of you, if you've got children with tablets or mobile phones, sometimes it is that good practice of limiting screen times. You know, they generally say an hour or two before bedtime. It helps the brain sort of calm down and get into that motion, that routine of it being time for sleep for them as well. But it also applies to a lot of us. Very easy with sort of applications such as TikTok and Facebook to get drawn into these sort of these activities. And you know, before you know it, you know, an hour's passed by and you think, well, hang on, I should have been asleep by now. I've passed my bedtime, sort of thing. Very easily done. Not that I'm speaking from experience with TikTok and things there anyway. So moving into the last question then, there's our tables at the moment, still all to play for the top 3 there. let's see how we do. So what is the significance of the bedtime routine? So it can only help children fall to sleep. It signals your body it's time to sleep, enhancing that sleep readiness. It increases your alertness before bedtime. It has no impact on adults. So what is that significance of a bedtime routine? And so that bedtime routine, it signals, to the body that it's time for sleep. And you generally find that I find that I start to become tired around the same sort of times each day, and it is then getting ready to get into that bedtime routine. And we might not think that we have a bedtime. I know we're all over 18 and think, oh yeah, I can do my own bedtimes, but we all kind of know when it's time for bed and what we need to do to prepare for that as well. And I think it's often one of those situations that we take for granted, sort of sleep and getting that quality sleep. And it's something that we take for granted, but it can impact on, if we're dealing with stress, if we're dealing with situations, it is making sure that we're seeking that advice and support. So I would seriously recommend is through On Mind and also the NHS. I often refer to them when I'm speaking with people and we're looking at welfare and well-being. It's often those are the resources that I go to give them advice. What I find particularly good is they have it in different formats. There's video, there's PDF that's available for people, and it can be something they pick up at this point, pick up at that time, but then they can also refer back to it later on in the day as well. So what you've all been waiting for is those scores. Let's see how you've all done, and we'll see if we can get Claire back on as well. So well done to Ope, Spring and Shakira. I will ensure that I pick up with each of you after today's event, and you will then have a lovely Pathway Group pen and also notepad to come along side with you as well. And the good news is we've had Claire join us again on the stage. So bear with me while I switch back over, and then hopefully Claire is able to pick up from exactly where she left off and go on from there. So thank you very much for your time. Please do feel free to reach out to me. I will drop my LinkedIn details in the chat window as well for anybody that may want to have a further conversation about tips for sleep.
Hi, I'm really sorry. I've technical laptop crashed, absolute worst nightmare, completely in full flow. Please forgive me. I will try pick up and be as quick as possible so I don't delay anybody else. So I was talking about adult learning, going to university at 29, becoming a nurse, working in operating theatres and meeting these extraordinary people. And in healthcare, as a woman, as an older person, as a single mum, I felt sometimes my challenges were sometimes a struggle to overcome. And what I sort of discovered is I started to observe my own leadership style and those that were around me and how they were serving me well and how I landed and how I could be better and what I could learn from other people. And as I've evolved through that 18-year career, from theatres into transformation, into project management, into all the different things that I do, there's really one important thing to consider, and it's people. Everybody's different and everybody brings something different. And I really embraced around things like shared decision making and how that really helped incorporate diverse perspectives in what we needed to do. And it fostered this real innovation and creativity. And I think that's the stuff that really excites me. If we don't ask people how we can do things better, if we assume, if we do it for them, if we fix, we miss these golden opportunities to really empower people, really listen with curiosity and allow people to fix it themselves, allow them to get it wrong. They can be supported, they can be nurtured and coached to do it in a safe way, but allow them to learn about themselves and how they can develop going forwards. And to see when you do that sort of thing, what you really do see, and the thing that really is special to me, is you do start to see this real talent and skills coming through, and people actually do physically blossom, take on opportunities, take on roles that they didn't think they were able to do, and actually start to see them grow in their career as well. They take ownership and accountability. And then there's a real sense of pride and belonging. And again, if you the King's Fund, Michael West talks about compassionate, inclusive leadership, and the 4 attributes to what makes a compassionate, inclusive leadership, and about designing a community where people feel belonged, where people feel they've got an identity, where they feel safe to speak up, where they're happy to challenge the status quo, and that there's no repercussions for those behaviours, and actually they're encouraged. So when we think about how we get to these shared decision-making places, we don't know what we don't know. And this really occurred to me throughout my career, that we had expectations. People get put into managerial positions and never actually had the training or the support to be able to be their best version of that. So coaching, mentoring, teaching, sharing knowledge, role modelling, massive things that we totally underestimate, because we can role model good and we can role model bad. And how we encourage people to be able to reflect, self-reflect, and have that insight to go, well, how do I land? Perception is wonderful, and we all go to work, do our best job, and we perceive we're doing a good job, but how are we really landing? What is our impact on that day? Is there something that's unbiased, unconscious bias, and do we need to address that? And do we need to be called out in a kind and respectful way? And that will build confidence within teams to build trust. And trust comes in 3 parts: authenticity, empathy, and logic. And you need all 3 to be able to build trust. And this became really pertinent for me, that the teams that I worked in and worked with lacked trust, and therefore the culture could be toxic, the culture could be inefficient, because there was no trust in there. And that made an opportunity to go in and really dig deep dive into how we could build trust back into teams. And that did incorporate some honest and difficult conversations at times, which takes that level of bravery and boldness to be able to do it. Again, the reason this is all really important to me, because about being patient focused and patient centered, and the quality of the stuff that we deliver to patients is drawn on the experiences of teams. And a really efficient team is a really safe team, and that's evidenced in papers and journals all over the country and world, actually. And continuous improvements and quality improvements and lessons learned, and trying to figure out how we own our errors, how we learn from those errors, and what we put in together to be able to drive that safety going forward, and challenging that status quo. And I think for me, I'm quite an outgoing extrovert person, so for me to speak up was really quite easy. But what I started to see was not everybody could do it. So I have a neurodiverse son who teaches me lots of ways of how my communication could be better, because one size does not fit all. And that goes in workforce, that goes in the NHS, it goes with patients. And it's again that curiosity of, how do you need me to communicate to be effective with you? How do I do the active listening? How do I hear you and see you, so that I know what your needs are? Because behind all behaviours are needs. And if we don't explore the needs, we'll never change the behaviours. And again, a big part of the work that I do with teams is being able to get them into a psychologically safe place, so that they can speak up and be honest and come from all different backgrounds. It's about how I communicate with those people to make sure that I'm hearing the right things and being able to help them solve the problems together to move forward, so that they've really got that ownership. And when I talk about the mentorship and the empowering women to do it, there seems to be, and it's just my experience, but there's a lot of women that says I can't. There's an expectation, you're a mum or you're a carer, you've got all these responsibilities, and that you're kind of the last person in the priority list. And for me, I have a coach and I have a mentor who helped me to prioritise my self-care, because while we're looking after others, it's really important that you look after yourself. And I think this is probably the most challenging. And when we have to explore and be brave to go forward, to accept that we're not perfect. And there's the wabi-sabi stuff about, you know, there's beauty in every imperfection. Find the beauty in our imperfections in our workplace, find it in ourselves, find it in each other, and we become more accepting. And I always sort of think of a team as a cake. And this is where the diversity part probably comes in quite well, is to make a cake, you need ingredients, you need the right amount, you need the right environment, the oven needs to be the right temperature, the timing needs to be correct, there needs to be a process and a structure to making a cake. And that's the same in a team. If we want to make the perfect cake, or we want to make as close to a perfect team, we need all the different ingredients. We need all the different things that come with making that cake to make it rise and taste good. If we don't invest in our teams, in our people, to be able to know that what their skill set is really rich and really diverse and really important to make sure this team works, then we are going to miss, and our cake will not rise or have a soggy bottom or whatever what the failure will be. Or it's about being able to say that I need a bit of all of that to make this really special. So I'm going to stop because I realise I've probably taken up too much time, but I just really wanted to emphasise, as a leader in the NHS, we've looked at lots of different ways of how we can bring in, you know, we're going to talk about apprenticeships. We do apprenticeships in theatres now. We look at different roles. We do restructures and re-establishments to be able to recognise what we're missing, and the norms that we've had historically don't necessarily fit anymore. And I would encourage you to challenge the norms. I would encourage you to be brave, to speak up with respect and kindness, to be able to make the changes that you need in your work environments, to make them as effective and efficient and as safe as possible. And I don't just mean safe for the person on the receiving end, I mean safe for yourself as well, because it's really important that you're kind to yourself. So thank you for listening. Apologies for the interruption. I'll hand back to Jag, and I've really enjoyed talking to you today, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. I mean, it's so inspirational, and thank you for sharing sort of your personal journey, your lived experience, and also talking about, you know, the strides made by women in healthcare, and obviously the strides made by yourself. It's truly an exceptional journey. And you know, in sort of the pre-conversations we had, you did say that, you know, you would sort of share these insights, and it's been absolutely fabulous. So thank you very much for joining us. I know you're going to stay for the panel session after. I'm encouraging people to put sort of answer your question in the chat, but also put some questions as well for the panel session. So please, attendees, put that on. So our next panel guest. So our next guest is Abby Changer, Careers Information and Quality Lead, NHS Health Careers, NHS England. So Abby is the Careers Information and Quality Lead for the NHS Careers team. She believes that high quality information is a powerful tool and enjoys highlighting the huge range of roles available within the NHS, many of which people don't know about. She's also passionate about raising awareness of the accessible and flexible routes into the NHS so that anyone who shares its values and wants to join can find a way to do so. A nurse by background, Abby's career in the NHS has now reached 3 decades. Wow, okay. So welcome, Abby. That's very surprising, but thank you very much for coming on board, and looking forward to this session.
Great, thank you very much, Agzeep, and thank you for having me here today. It's a real privilege. So I have probably got far too many slides actually for the time, so it's going to be a little bit of a rattle through kind of range of roles in the NHS, more of an information kind of giving session this bit, but I hope, you know, fits well with the other inspirational sessions, and I know we're gonna hear from Dimple about her journey as well, which will be great, and I'm sure will fit well too. So let me just share my slides. Hopefully these are going to come up. So yeah, there are more than 350 different careers in the NHS. Obviously not going to have time this morning to go through all of those, but what I really want to do is to give you a little bit of an overview, to give you hopefully some inspiration, and to give you some signposts and some places you can go to find out more, and maybe to bust some myths as well. So, you know, some people think you've got to have a degree in order to work in the NHS. You haven't. Some people think, well, I've got to be great in front of people and I've got to want to kind of provide hands-on patient care. No, you haven't. There are loads of behind the scenes roles as well where you're never even going to come into contact with patients. So, you know, lots and lots of myths to bust kind of as we go through as well. Just by a little bit of background, just to help you sort of navigate the NHS, it is a bit of a beast. So although we've got kind of this overarching umbrella organisation, we talk about the NHS, healthcare is actually delivered by hundreds of separate organisations, and each one of those is an employing organisation in its own right. So that does mean that in terms of vacancies, in terms of sort of workforce priorities, apprenticeship opportunities, that kind of thing, it can really vary from, for example, NHS trust to NHS trust or GP practice to GP practice. So it's just a little bit of a kind of a bit of word of warning, I suppose, that you're not necessarily going to find exactly the same opportunities at each organisation. What we do know, though, and this fits, you know, really nicely in terms of International Women's Month Day, is that the NHS workforce is over 3/4 women, so really, you know, strong representation. I'm not going to get into kind of details of where they sit in terms of seniority, and obviously we've got a way to go there still, but in terms of overall representation, it is high. Okay, so categories of careers. This isn't perfect, but this is how we categorise our careers information currently on the Health Careers website. And I'm just going to very, very quickly run through these groups, particularly the ones that are less obvious. Allied health professionals, so this is actually a massive group of staff, and this incorporates roles like occupational therapists, radiographers, prosthetists, orthoptists, physios, speech and language therapists, and many others. There are actually 15 different roles in this group. And working alongside and supporting them are various sort of healthcare support workers, therapy support workers and things as well. The ambulance service team, not just the paramedics, but also the more perhaps behind the scenes roles, call handlers, that kind of thing, and the patient transport service, so the kind of non-emergency side of things. The dental team, again, not just talking about dentists here, but talking about other dental care professionals, therapists, hygienists, dental nurses, dental technicians, and many others there, again, with varied routes in. We've all heard of doctors. I'm not going to dwell on those, but 60 plus specialties with, so it's not just about deciding to be a doctor. There are then other decisions after that. Estates and facilities, so some really interesting jobs in here actually. So people often don't think about the fact that we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need people, and this is an increasing agenda now, we need people working in sustainability and kind of green energy roles, and the NHS has got aspirations around that, and so it should, as a, you know, a massive employer, biggest employer in Europe. Health informatics, again, another growing area. So if digital is your thing, there are going to be roles for you. You know, cybersecurity, people don't think, oh, I'm into cybersecurity, there's a role for me in the NHS. There is. This, again, as I said, is something that's just going to expand and expand. And healthcare science, these aren't just lab-based jobs, but there are jobs that are very patient-facing. So if that is your thing and you're really interested in science, lots of roles there. Management, so this isn't just about being a chief exec, you'd be looking after people, money, project management, strategic kind of management, estates and facilities, loads of entry-level roles, work your way up. We've got the current chief exec of NHS England is Amanda Pritchard, and she has come in through the NHS Graduate Management Training Scheme back in the day, as did the previous chief exec actually of NHS England as well. So lots of opportunities to grow your career there. Medical associate professions, main role to highlight there is a role called physician associate, working alongside the medical team. Midwifery, nursing. Nursing is, you know, a huge part of the NHS workforce. 4 different fields of nursing. So you've got adult, paediatric, mental health and learning disability nursing there. Pharmacy, again, not just pharmacists, but you've got pharmacy technicians and assistants as well. So lots of kind of more flexible routes in. And the psychological professions, again, a massive group of staff here, both, and this is again going to be expanding, so both in terms of numbers of staff, but also in terms of types of roles, and we've really seen that over the last few years. Various kind of practitioner roles, a lot of them paid training positions, so again offering that flexibility and supported route in. Public health, I think during COVID we all learned a little bit more about public health roles and what they mean. And the wider healthcare team, I really don't like the fact this is last on the list here. It shouldn't be, because this incorporates many absolutely vital roles that fit in and make this, you know, this huge machine work together. So as I said, sorry about that. It is a massive quick rattle through those, but you can find out more on our website, and I think the link's already gone in the chat. Thank you, Martin. So just a few ideas here if you're a very practical hands-on person. This isn't an exhaustive list, but just a few roles to give you a little bit of an idea about the type of things that you might want to think about. So you know, carpenter, dental technologist, IT support engineer, chef, orthotist, all very hands-on practical roles. Or if you want to work with children and young people, again, this isn't just being about a children's nurse or a paediatrician. There are lots of different ways to do that. You might be an occupational therapist or occupational therapy support worker working specifically with children and young people, or a health play specialist, social worker. Again, not an exhaustive list, but just a few things just to get you thinking and kind of inspired. Or perhaps you really love science and you want to use that in a way that helps people. So, you know, this could be slide after slide after slide here with healthcare, but again, just a few ideas to kind of get you thinking. And getting in, there are so many different entry points. I think of it a little bit like a tube line. So you don't have to get on at one end of the tube line and stay on all the way to the other end. You can hop on at different points. So some people do join having had some work experience in the NHS, but for other people, they might have had a really lengthy career in a completely different sector and then come into the NHS with all that richness, with those transferable skills, with that life experience. Claire was talking about, you know, starting her nursing journey in her late 20s. I was talking to someone recently who's trained as a mental health nurse in their 40s, and actually on their apprenticeship, they had someone in their 60s training to be a mental health nurse. It's about being able to do a job safely and effectively. So if you're there, like me, in your 50s, thinking I'm too old to make a switch, you're not. You really are not, and we're seeing that increasingly across many, many different sectors. So loads of entry points. There are some roles that you can get into even if you haven't got maths and English GCSEs, and you can be supported by your employer to get your functional skills, and then you can progress your career from there. I know I'm really looking forward to hearing Dimple's story about apprenticeships. We know that the number of apprenticeships in the NHS is going to be expanding over the coming years. The NHS published a big long-term workforce plan last summer, and it's very clear that the aspiration to move towards a massively increased number of apprenticeships, which is really good news. Okay, just to give you, again, just a small selection of some of the vacancies, apprenticeship vacancies we've seen over the past few months. Just tried to pick out a bit of a range, and these are a range of levels as well. So we've got apprenticeships from level 2, which is GCSE equivalent, up to level 7, which is at master's level, and everything in between. So just I've picked out a few around the country. These you'll find advertised on the NHS jobs website. That's where you'll find all apprenticeships and all kind of straight up job vacancies. And you apply through the NHS jobs website as well, and we'll talk. I'll nip back to that a little bit at the end when I'm doing a bit of signposting. There are some degree level apprenticeships. These are all clinical ones here. So I suppose my, again, little word of warning is that although these are all technically available, we're not seeing huge numbers of vacancies at the minute. But what we do suggest to people is if you really want to become a nurse, for example, and do that through an apprenticeship route, but you can't find a degree level apprenticeship near you, think about joining the workforce at more of an entry level role. You're getting a foot in the door, you're gaining experience, it's not wasted time. You're earning money, you're getting known by the team, you're proving yourself, you're showing you've got those values. Claire mentioned the NHS values. I'm going to come on to those in a minute. They are vital. So if you're thinking about joining the NHS, think really carefully about how you evidence those, and I'll show you those in a minute. So there are also lots of full-time undergraduate degree opportunities. So if you are wanting to go to university, lots of different ways to do that. And there is some funding available. So if, for example, you want to become a nurse, even if it's your second degree, if you're eligible for student finance through Student Finance England, so that's your kind of tuition fee loans and maintenance loans, you'll be eligible for something called the NHS Learning Support Fund. Sorry, the font on this slide's a little bit small actually, but what this will give you is £5,000 a year while you're studying. It's not a loan, so it doesn't have to be repaid. So it's great kind of bit of extra support. And there are some courses that you get an extra £1,000 a year. So for example, mental health and learning disability nursing, because they're a bit harder to recruit to, you can get £6,000 a year. There is also parental support, so £2,000 a year if you've got dependent children, and help towards travel and accommodation costs, as well as an exceptional support fund. So just wanted to mention that, because often that can be the thing that stops people being able to follow certain routes. But that's why we've got the apprenticeship routes as well, so that you've got that option to earn a salary while you're gaining that qualification. So a couple of example apprenticeship pathways here, just to give you an idea of what's possible in terms of progressing a career. So if you want to become a healthcare science practitioner, it's possible to do a level 2 healthcare science apprenticeship, move on to a level 4, associate level 1, and then a degree level 1. It's possible to become a therapeutic radiographer through apprenticeships as well. So healthcare support worker, assistant practitioner, therapeutic radiographer. So again, we often say, get into the workforce, start experiencing it, start working out whether it's definitely for you as well, because it's just as important to decide what isn't for you as it is to decide what, you know, what is going to work well for you. So many routes into nursing. So you can start off with, you know, your GCSEs, you can do something called a nursing associate apprenticeship, and then move on to a shortened registered nurse degree apprenticeship. And nursing can take you so many places. Like Claire, I started out my career as a nurse, started my training in '92. I've stayed in the NHS ever since, even though I'm not doing a clinical job anymore. I've just been a bit of a magpie. I haven't had a plan. I've just seen opportunities as they've come up, and also, like Claire, actually have been a single mother for the large part of my career, and have been able to access kind of flexible opportunities to make that work for me and my family. Okay, work experience. A lot of people stress about getting work experience, and it can be difficult to get work, that face-to-face patient-facing work experience in particular. And my main message is don't panic, because think about all areas of your life. Think about how you can demonstrate you're the right person for a particular job by drawing on, you know, home life. Even if, you know, when I'm talking to young people who are still at school but have a Saturday job, if they're working in a shop, they're delivering customer service, they're able to demonstrate some of these values. Volunteering as well is a great way, and there are an increasing number of kind of online work-related learning opportunities as well now, because we know that we just haven't got enough face-to-face work experience to go around. But think as well about what is actually required for the job, and whether it is, you know, what sort of work experience is being asked for. Okay, right, values-based recruitment. As well as you demonstrating you've got the right experience and qualifications for a job in the NHS, and this goes for healthcare courses as well, it is vital to show that you hold the right values that align with the values from the NHS Constitution. So I hope there's nothing surprising in this list. There shouldn't be, but what you need to be able to do is to evidence that you understand and live these values. It is a privilege working in healthcare, and it is so important to be able to show that you live these, that you know what these values would look like in that job that you want to do. So you might get asked to interview something like, well, what does respect and dignity mean to you? How do you show compassion to someone? What in this job that you're applying for, what do we mean by working together for patients? What sort of scenarios are we talking about? So these are really important. If you're applying for a job, preparing for an interview, think about how you can talk about these and be ready to answer questions on them. Okay, Health Careers website, nearly finished. I'm really aware of the time. Lots of resources on here, the links in the chat, so have an explore. We've got a careers quiz on there. So that can be a useful tool if you think, yeah, I want to work in the NHS, but I don't know what job is going to work for me. It's a series of statements, and depending on how you respond to those, it's going to come up with some suggested roles. So it's not the most sophisticated careers tool ever, but it might just give you some ideas. And then you can click into that role and find out more. So in the Explore Roles section, that's where you'll find those pages of information about many of the roles within health. We've got a course finder tool as well if you're looking for a course that leads to professional registration in one of the healthcare professions. And the NHS jobs website, that's where you'll find the vacancies. So there is a really simple search bar there, so you can use keywords, you can search by a particular postcode, by a town or city, and there is some hints on applications and interviews on there as well, so that's really, really helpful. And you can register with the NHS jobs website too and save your searches. So it's helpful just to have a look as well to see what's out there and being advertised near you and what those employers are looking for. And there will always be a named contact with each job advert as well. Phone them up. That's what they're there for. Have an informal conversation before applying for the job. See if you can go in on a visit. Okay, it shows initiative and it will make you better prepared if you're invited for interview as well. So don't be afraid to use those named contacts on those job adverts. Right, that was high speed. I am sorry. Please ask questions, but if we don't get around to them today, we have got a NHS Health Careers contact centre. You can email, you can call, you can use the contact us form on the Health Careers website. And please follow us on social media. We do quite a lot of social media live events. We do monthly Q&As on Facebook and Instagram. And also we often have kind of conversations with people in working in the NHS or training to be in the NHS to really dig into those real life stories. Thank you for listening. Sorry, it was so quick.
Thank you, Abby. I mean, you spoke about all the amazing careers within the NHS and sort of totally opened up my mind in terms of what opportunities are available with the NHS. And also talking about the positivities of apprenticeships as well. So we work very closely within sort of the our sort of initiatives around engaging with the multicultural community, so the Multicultural Apprenticeship Alliance, the awards, our festival apprenticeships, and NHS England are one of the strongest supporters of our initiative. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for sharing all that information. Wonderful. So the next session we've got is around sort of that real lived experience. So we have Dimple Patel, who's a registered nurse degree apprentice with BPP University. So Dimple works at Great Ormond Street Hospital for children, specialising in cardiology services. Currently a fourth-year apprentice, and she's about to submit a dissertation and start a 7th ward placement at Gosh. As a passionate, committed individual, Dimple's apprenticeship has given her a chance to achieve her goal of becoming a paediatric nurse at Great Ormond Street Hospital. She's also president, founder of the BPP Nursing Society, student voice representative of the School of Nursing at BPP, inclusion and diversity ambassador, apprentice champion, social impact apprenticeship influencer. At all of these are at BPP University, and also council member at the Association of Apprentices. So welcome, Dimple, and thank you very much for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you. I feel very honoured to come after such an esteemed panel. I have some slides. They're just for visual purposes, so you don't have to just look at my face. Give me a second, I'll just share these. So I'm going to talk you through my journey, and it won't be very long, so I'll crack on with it. So ever since I was a young child, nursing had always been something that I've been passionate about. I think I saw a program about Make-A-Wish Foundation, and I said, I want to do that. I want to make sick children happy, and I want to be a part of that. So I went to school, went to college, studied health and social care, and nursing was always on my horizon. That was always what I was aiming for. And I did enroll onto a traditional route into a degree course at university. However, being a neurodiverse learner, it didn't quite fit my kinesthetic style of learning, and I struggled. It took some time out of my university course and entered the world of work. And that is when I started working at Great Ormond Street Hospital. So I have since been working at Great Ormond Street Hospital for coming up to 15 years now. I don't know where the time has flown. And my day job is I am currently a mechanical heart specialist. So I specialize in mechanical hearts for children in end-stage heart failure as a bridge to heart transplant. My job involves a lot of teaching and training, and I'm teaching and training medics, nurses at all levels. However, despite my skills, my knowledge, and my experience that I'd gained over these 15 years, there was this ceiling. And without my registration, without my degree, I wasn't able to have that progression upwards. I was able to progress sideways, and I was able to do different roles and to continue gaining skills. However, I wasn't able to progress upwards. I wasn't able to receive an increase in my salary. And in the current economic climate, that can be very challenging. So you might ask, why didn't you just go back to do your nursing? What kind of stopped you from going back and completing your nursing degree? And there's two things that were my major factors. There was multiple things, but my two major factors was, once you've been in the world of work, and we talked about kind of finances, it's really hard to think about how you're going to support yourself for 3 years without a wage. You've got bills, mortgages, and etc. And that was one of the big barriers. The other barrier that I had, and this is something that a few of the talkers before me have touched upon, was I spent the last 15 years convincing myself I wasn't good enough. I convinced myself I failed. It wasn't for me. That door had closed. That pathway wasn't right for me. And it left me in a really awkward position. I am so passionate about nursing. I love what I do, but I just couldn't find the right pathway for me. And that's when I came across my apprenticeship pathway. I got in this little thing, I don't know if you can see it on there, and I really love this. And it says our education system. So it says everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its life believing it's stupid, or believing it's not able to achieve that. And that's why I talk about my apprenticeship journey as being my golden ticket. It's giving me a pathway that's suitable for me to achieve my goals of becoming a nurse. So like I said, I am now currently on my my nursing pathway. So I am doing a registered nurse degree apprenticeship. So that's a level 6 apprenticeship, and it allowed me to come out as a registered nurse. It's a 4-year program, and like Jags mentioned, I'm in the final stages of it. I'm in the middle of my dissertation, which is taking up the majority of my life at the moment. But I'm keen, once my dissertation's out the way, to get into practice and do the things that I love doing, which is that hands-on patient care, being out there, out on the wards. What this has allowed me to do is really fulfill that passion, that long-lasting passion that I had, and just open up those doors to achieving the things that I wanted to achieve. And I also wanted to mention, I've had the opportunity to work alongside many inspirational women. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight was, it's so important to have that visual representation. So having somebody that looks like me, having somebody that shared the same struggles as me, has shared the same journey. And I love this, you can't be what you can't see. And that representation is so important. And it's definitely a contributing factor. So I talk about this being my golden opportunity, and we touched upon some of the things that I have been able to be involved in. And I think the apprenticeship pathway has been great for me to get involved in initiatives that I'm passionate about. Passionate about for apprenticeships, passionate about for women, for individuals, but also how I can use that in terms of being an advocate for my patients, and how I'll be able to work that into my career also. And yeah, I think that's probably about it for me. Feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you, Dimple. Again, and sort of another fabulous insight into your journey. I heard you speak at Mansion House a couple of months ago, I think, at sort of the UCAS and Association of Apprentices session that they had there. And you were inspiring, and hence sort of the reason why we really wanted you as part of this social mobility forum. So thank you very much for sharing your insights. I think what we should do now, shall we go into, Martin, can we get everybody back on and we can go straight into the panel session? We do have sort of 10 or 15 minutes for questions. I'm just looking through the question and answer section, but there's no questions currently there. So
I do have I've come prepared, Jag. I've got a couple prepared, and it is open to the group. But please do feel that the audience, please drop any sort of questions and comments into the chat for us. So I think today, we've got a standout set of speakers today, and I think it's been able to sort of convey to us really the obstacles and some of those barriers that we've all sort of gone through and given those experiences. But can I ask, and this is out to any of our speakers today, what are those sort of most significant barriers that are still there today for us, and how can we all work together to overcome those now?
I mean, I can just quickly jump in because I think there's been a lot of inspirational conversations happening, and I think some people have already touched on this. I think one of the barriers, or one of the things would be, I always say it's around forms of encouragement. Some people may have belief systems where they think they can go for something, others may not be as confident to do so. And again, people have spoken to this quite beautifully, but I think that's something that we can encourage a lot more people to do. Sometimes we'll find leaders or managers who will, again, be those sorts of voices that say, okay, why don't you do it? This is how you do it. Go to this application form. And that changes a lot of things. But I think that's something you can teach people to do. So it's not just that one really brilliant standout leader. Yeah. Actually, get all your leaders to get into that position, and also make sure that they're not just doing it to people who have the same sort of affinity to themselves. That, for me, would be really good inclusive leadership. And so those forms of encouragement, we can all kind of teach it to others and do it for others. I think that will start helping us balance out some of those inequalities.
Definitely. And I think when I was sort of reading through that question, what I had sort of jumped to my mind was obviously the image that you showed a little bit earlier on, where you had the three sort of variations of it. So there was individuals, with the high wall, and then with the sort of the low wall, making it sort of that equal field. And I do believe sometimes it's people knowing where to go for that advice and guidance, where they can go for that information. So things like the NHS careers site is very useful. So whilst you were talking, I did jump on and have a quick look at it myself, and it's one of those resources that's there for people, and it's people that just need to start talking about it, showcasing it, and pointing people towards it as well. In addition to, we also have services like the National Career Service that try to provide that impartial service to give that advice and support out for people. But I do like, the fact is it's encouragement, it's people having conversations as well. Is there anybody else that would like to contribute on that point at all? No. Oh.
So you might be on mute.
Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what was just been said, really. So in my experience in the NHS, we're our own barriers a lot of the time, because we limit what we think we can do. And if what you need and what I needed was somebody in my workplace to inspire me, to believe in me, to encourage me, to signpost me, and then what that does, it makes me want to be able to pay that forward And I think exactly what Ope has just said is if we can create a culture of leaders and facilitators to be able to recognise talent, encourage it and develop that talent, what we'll get is what we gain back is so rich and so important, because what that then is delivers to the patients is tenfold. So we are our own worst enemies sometimes at these things, and we set ourselves limitations. And I, again, really advocate for people to be brave and bold. And if I can do this, and I've had lots of challenges in my life, anybody can do this. And just go find your role model, go find that person that inspires you, and let them help guide you to where you need to be, where you want to be.
And I think, yeah, you've touched upon sort of my next point there is, how can other organisations, how can other individuals become sort of advocates for this, for equality, diversity, inclusion as well? What sort of things can they do? I mean, I know we're doing a webinar, we've got out to a certain audience, but what other things can be happening? Is it conversations that need to be? Is it events? How do we get this information? How do we spread this information around? That is the key part for myself. So in terms of your own sort of experiences, how do you find that sort of that what you're referring to there, particularly Claire, is obviously the encouragement of others, but what sort of mentorship and peer support is actually out there for the people within healthcare, or let alone any organisations as well? What does that look like out there at the moment?
So if I'm going to be honest, and I'm always honest, not enough is actually the answer to that question, because again, when I mentioned about leadership roles and management roles, there's very little. It's getting better, but there's very little support with courses and teaching and capacity to allow people to get out and the time to go do that. So I think organisationally, there's a responsibility for us to promote that, and for us to facilitate people to have the time, the space, the encouragement, the funding, whatever that takes, to allow them to go and get these skills sets that are going to just enhance and grow them in their careers. And I think that's possibly a universal problem. I don't think it's an individual problem, but I think it has to be talked about, and it has to be spoken and challenged. And then we'll work our way through as to what that looks like. We have to teach people how to be confident, how to believe in themselves, how to signpost, how to set themselves up for success. And I just think that's possibly a missing piece. And I don't know what Abby might know a bit more, because obviously in the line of work she does, you'll probably come across that quite a lot.
I think, well, I don't really know what's available in individual organisations, but yeah, I think, Claire, you're right that there isn't enough of it, but in some organisations it is, it's definitely being thought about, but yeah, we always need more. There is often, something like clinical supervision that goes on, preceptorship kind of programmes, particularly for newly qualified staff, and various arrangements in place, but yeah, lots to do still.
I was just going to give my thoughts from a learner perspective, and I would say I've had the opposite experience. I've had an abundance of kind of support and guidance, and I don't know, because I'm in that protected learner or apprentice sphere. So I get support from my university or my learning provider, and there's multiple levels within that, and independent support even from the university side of things, and then from my employer. So we have a dedicated team specifically to support apprentices and them on their journey, as well as my peers, as well as my line managers. So I feel, and then the external organizations like Association of Apprenticeships, I feel like I've had an abundance of support. So I feel like that's something that is working really well.
Brilliant.
So we need to bottle that, Dimple, so we can bottle it and share it, because we need that equity across the board, not just for learners, but for anybody in their careers who want to progress or develop. So it's really nice to hear when it goes well.
And then just from each of you, then, because I'm conscious of time, and I know it will sort of abruptly end on that sort of 12 o'clock mark anyway. But what advice would you give to sort of people that started out into the health careers? So obviously, Dimple, I know you've started from sort of a younger age for them. Some of them are sort of making those sort of career changes later down the line. But can I sort of go around and ask each of you, what advice would you give to somebody that's maybe considering that healthcare career, and they want to make that sort of impact within their job role? What would that advice look like?
I'm happy to start off.
Yeah.
I would say, like we've mentioned already, there are so many different paths in the NHS, and there are so many different things that you can fall into. So just finding what works for you, and there's different things that will work for you at different times in your life, and that's okay. And I feel like the NHS is wonderful for that. There is something for everyone, and at all different stages in your life. So that's the advice that I would give.
Okay. Come round to Abby. I'll go around how my cameras are set up. Abby, is there any advice from yourself?
Thank you. I think kind of just touching back on something I said, don't underestimate the experience, the skills, the knowledge that you already have. So if you're looking at a job description or a person specification and thinking, not quite sure, can I do all of those things? Don't be put off if there's some bits that you think are missing, because it's okay to go into a job not having done all of it yet. And also don't be afraid to ask. I've gone for roles that are advertised as full-time, but I've asked if it's possible to do them part-time, and that's been agreed to. So don't be put off by what you're seeing in front of your face. Ask the questions.
Okay. Come to yourself now, Claire.
I probably would echo what Abby said in her speech. It's about don't limit yourself. Don't think 'cause I'm too old, or I didn't have the right qualification, or I didn't do well at school. Don't limit yourself ever, and just show some courage in your self-belief that you can, and then go ask the questions and get the right advice and guidance to where you're going to be, because it doesn't matter where you've come from, it's where you are now and what it is you want to achieve. And I do believe with the right mindset, you can achieve whatever you want to and bring that richness in. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. And finally, Dr. Ope, what would your advice to anybody starting off in this health career?
Yeah, well, I'll probably speak to that, but more so just recruitment in general, anyone who's trying to get their foot in the door. And someone used the word a magpie, and when they were saying it, I was like, teach me how to be a magpie, because you need some of these things, these skills, and there's no right or wrong way to make it to where you want to make it. And I always remember what my father told me. He said, if there's no door there, go and create your own door. And actually that's how I started this organization. But the one thing I will say is that, and I think it was Claire or Abby who spoke to, it was Abby actually speaking to the values. And actually, when we work with organisations and they're recruiting people, we always look at what are your values and making sure that candidate is speaking to those equality, like, let's say, values. So we would want to see things that people don't really speak about, like emotional intelligence. What does that look like? Or you spoke about compassion. I want to see someone who's going to show me those things. So I think for me, speak to and really be able to show those sorts of values.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, Jag, I'm going to hand back to yourself to sort of wrap up, if that's okay. But I just want to thank you for answering sort of those questions there. Now, we have had one come through on the through Crowdcast here. It is quite a lengthy one, so I will share this round to you afterwards. So I need to digest and understand it a bit more myself. So I do apologise to the person that has asked that one, but we'll make sure you get an answer. Thank you very much, ladies. It's very informative. I know I've certainly learned a lot. And there's some resources that I've shared throughout, which I'm going to bring up to sort of share out to my own apprentices as well. On that note, I'll hand back over to Jag to sort of do a closeout. But again, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martin. I just want to quickly run to Claire. We've got sort of a minute left just before me closing, but I just want to get an answer to that question that you raised in your session. So what is the most important word in any language?
So it's your name. It's really simple. It's your name. And when we talk about equality and inclusivity and diversity, your name is your identity. So make sure you can spell somebody's name, pronounce it, use it, don't ignore it. And again, it's about that is your identity. So I would, out of everything today, please be respectful of people's names and embrace your name, because that is the most important word.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So it just leaves me really to thank all the panel to talking about such important subjects, Women's History Month, women who advocate for equity, diversity, inclusion, fabulous session on that. And thank you to you all to talking about sort of, women's role within healthcare and the opportunities that are available available there. Thank you for everybody joining the webinar. We will be looking to do future webinars, and it just leaves me to wish you all a great day, and thank you very much again for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.